So really, when we think about, okay, well, in terms of alternative solutions for cat and dog food, if we don't have really plant-based as an option, then we are left with meat. And how do we actually arrive at a meat-based option that is both humane and environmentally sustainable? And really, there's only one solution, and that's cultured meat.
Hi, I'm Tori Mystic, and you're listening to the Wear, Wag, Repeat podcast, the only show dedicated to supporting women in all areas of the pet industry. In today's episode, we are taking a deep dive into the future of pet nutrition with Dr. Shannon Falconer, CEO and founder of BioCraft Pet Nutrition. Shannon, a biochemist and animal rescue volunteer, is leading a revolution in the pet food industry with cultured meat, a sustainable, cruelty-free alternative that offers optimal nutritional benefits. We chat about everything from the environmental paw print of the pet food industry to the concept of cultured meat. Unlike vegan meat for people, BioCraft has the advantage of not needing to make their meat resemble a chicken breast or a burger because it will end up being used in pet food. I learned so much hearing about the formulation of BioCraft's cultured meat and how it is fine-tuned for bioavailability of nutrients. And in some ways, it actually makes it healthier than conventionally farmed meat. We also uncover the ecological impact of the pet food supply chain and explore how cultured meat compares to traditional meat products in terms of cost and sustainability. This conversation is as eye-opening as it is insightful. Please share this episode with your friends and get the cruelty-free cultured meat conversation started. Dr. Shannon Falconer is the CEO and founder of BioCraft Pet Nutrition, a biotech startup creating nutritious, sustainable, cultured meat pet food. Shannon holds a master's degree in biochemistry, a PhD in chemical biology, and worked as a postdoctoral research fellow at Stanford University prior to founding BioCraft. Shannon has spent decades volunteering in the animal rescue community and is also a fur mom to her amazing rescue dogs, Nori, and brand new dog, River. Hi, Shannon.
Hi. Thanks very much for having me on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I'm fascinated. I mean, this is such an interesting topic. It's not every day that I'm talking about cultured meat. And we don't mean that it's meat that like goes to the symphony and art museums. That's not that kind of cultured.
Right. Yes. We're making, specifically cultured meat for pet food. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So we were chatting a little bit before we hit record, just about, I guess, like the path that you've taken to get where you are now. Would you mind elaborating on that a little bit and kind of walking our listeners through how you got into this, which seems like a very specific niche?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it started a long, long time ago. I grew up with 3 dogs and 3 cats. So I formed a relationship with animals at a very young age and then stopped eating meat in my early teens for animal welfare reasons, and then started volunteering with animal rescues in my late teens. And then I've continued to do that through my entire life. But I'm also, I'm a scientist by training. So I was, my master's and my PhD in chemical biology. And then while I was working as a postdoc at Stanford, that's when I really decided that I wanted to apply my scientific training to taking animals out of the supply chain. And I mean, there in no supply chain are there more animals than, of course, in the food supply chain. And of course, at first, I thought I would venture down the road of replacing products that are otherwise meant for human consumption, because humans are the main consumers of animal-based products. But as I started to think about it more and I really not only just think about it, but also understand more just what the contribution of pet food is to sustaining the animal agriculture industry at large, that's when I really made the determination that it was, I could move the needle more if I focused on pet food. Also because as somebody who hasn't eaten meat for many decades, I'm perfectly happy with what my options are, but I'm nonetheless really hamstrung when it comes to finding alternatives for my pets. And it's virtually white space in terms of, what types of nutritious foods can you find for your dogs and especially your cats that don't also involve harming an animal. And so this was when I decided that I would move into the pet food arena. But unlike humans who are omnivores, right? And so there are these plant-based options that are available. Dogs and cats are a little bit different metabolically. Dogs actually are very, very similar to humans metabolically, much more than they are to cats. But the reality is still that the majority of people don't feel comfortable feeding their dogs a vegetarian diet. And so meat does prevail. And then for cats, it's especially, that is even more the case. So really, when we think about, okay, well, in terms of alternative solutions for cat and dog food, if we don't have really plant-based as an option, then we are left with meat. And how do we actually arrive at a meat-based option that is both humane and environmentally sustainable? And really, there's only one solution, and that's cultured meat.
So fascinating. Okay, so I have a lot of questions, and I told you that I would have some stupid questions.
I'm sure they're not stupid.
So bear with me. But okay, with the cultured meat, is it like tastes like chicken, tastes like beef? Like, are you trying to replicate existing animal meat product tastes and feels, et cetera, or is it a whole new thing?
No, this is a great question. Unlike the human food industry or cultured meat that is intended for humans to consume, we don't have to make a chicken breast that looks like a chicken breast, right? And has that three-dimensionality. Because pet food is by and large the majority of pet food that people purchase. It comes in the form of either a kibble or a wet food. So it's already in this sort of indistinguishable form. It doesn't look anything like it would have looked when it was initially coming from an animal. So for us, we don't need to concern ourselves with actually recreating that three-dimensionality. However, in terms of the taste, certainly, this is a very, very important focus of ours because taste is what drives pleasure and when it comes to eating for both ourselves and for our pets. So taste is very important. And most of the taste comes from, it's not actually protein that delivers a delicious taste. For the most part, it's fat, it's animal fat. So for us, it's very important as we're developing in the development of our cultured meat to ensure that there are the relevant, not irrelevant, but the relevant animal fats that are being produced by our cells, our animal cells, that are delicious for our cats and dogs, and that are also nutritionally required. So cats and dogs have a much higher requirement for specific fats than humans do, and so this is actually fat is a really important criteria that we're assessing and monitoring as we go.
So you kind of have the opportunity to engineer a protein, I guess we should say, because it's not really meat, right?
Well, so interestingly,
how do you refer to this?
Yeah, actually, I do refer to it more as meat than protein. Okay. So meat is a combination of many nutrients, right? It is not just protein. And certainly in the pet food arena in particular, we think about protein all the time as being the core essential nutrient that our pets need. But interestingly, it's not actually protein that makes a cat a carnivore or a dog a carnivore or an omnivore. It's not the protein. It is these other nutrients that animals and only animals produce that make a cat a carnivore. So, for example, taurine, which is an amino acid, but it's not an amino acid that's incorporated into a string of amino acids that make a protein. So it's just a single amino acid. Taurine is one, arachidonic acid, so one of these fatty acids, vitamin D, vitamin A. Unlike you and me, we can eat a carrot, and our body takes the beta carotene that is in that carrot, and we have the enzymatic machinery to then convert that beta carotene into vitamin A, which our body then uses. Cats don't have that enzyme, so they are unable to convert carotene to vitamin A. So the only way that vitamin A, they need to get it from their diet, and they need to get it from that preformed vitamin A is only manufactured by animal cells. So interestingly, yes, it's not the protein. So we do think of the product that we're making as meat, not just protein. Protein is in there, but that's not the thing that we're most concerned about, because we can really get protein from a lot of different sources. And when we think about the amino acid profiles of plants, for example, yes, not all plants are what are referred to as complete proteins, meaning they don't have all of the amino acids that we need or our cats and dogs need. But if you combine different species of plants, then you can get a full, a complete protein. So protein is not the problem. It's these other nutrients. And that's what we're really, really focused on. So we're focusing on meat, which is a combination of nutrients, not just protein.
Fascinating. Thank you so much for that explanation. I have never heard of any of that, but it makes total sense. And kind of where I was headed before that wonderful explanation was just that you have the opportunity to engineer a meat that has like the ideal levels and combinations for bioavailability for our dog's digestion or our cat's digestion and all of that kind of stuff. So it's in a way better than regular meat.
Yeah, I'm very glad that you brought this up, because that is a really, really cool point about cultured meat, that it is tunable. You can say engineer, but actually we're not doing any genetic manipulation at all. So there's no engineering or genetic modification. It's only, we say tunable because what we simply do is just adjust the environmental conditions that we would grow those cells under to, say, for example, produce more of a given nutrient that might be required or of interest. So we can actually ultimately, we can think about, this is down the road, but we can actually even think about customizing or personalizing foods that are appropriate for different types of species, or not species, but breeds of dogs or cats, or have specific health conditions. So there's this nice aspect of it, of this being something that we can control far more than, for example, the meat that comes from an animal that's been slaughtered. It's very difficult to be able to, as we say, sort of create that tunable nutritional profile the way we can with cultured meat.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that it offers great nutritional value, and like you said, the ability to maybe tune it to suit specific health needs, and that's really awesome. But there's this whole other side of the coin, which is like the environmental impact. I know I've done blog posts about the environmental impact of just meat in the pet industry and how huge it is. So why is synthetic meat or cultured meat, why is that better for the environment?
So more recently, there's more and more information that's coming to light in terms of what the contribution of pet food is to the environment. And I think it should be of no surprise to anybody at this point that animal agriculture is one of the main drivers of climate change. And animal agriculture is also what supports pet food industry by and large, or we can also say, though, that the pet food industry supports the animal agriculture industry because it is a huge customer. It's definitely been argued by many people, including the industry itself that actually, no, pet food is a sustainable practice because pet food is made from largely, it's made from the 50% of the animal that humans don't want to eat, combined with all of the animals that don't ever make it to slaughter. And so this is also referred to colloquially as dead stock. So basically, if an animal dies in transit due to dehydration, suffocation, if an animal dies before it is slaughtered, then it cannot be sold for human consumption. And so all of this meat that is both the meat that humans don't want to eat, or the parts that humans don't want to eat, as well as this otherwise unsellable meat, all of this then goes towards the pet food industry. And so the argument can be made, well, what would happen with all of this meat otherwise? So therefore, it's sustainable practice. The flip side of that is to say, okay, if we think about just in terms of the numbers, pet food uses close to 2 million tons of meat per year. And so if all of that meat was not sold to pet food, you can imagine that this would massively undermine the margins in the animal agriculture industry, because this is a lot of meat that is being sold. And without that, the economics of the industry as we know it could simply not exist. So one argument that, the pet food manufacturers might make is that, this is a sustainable industry. The other side of the argument is, well, actually, it's the pet food industry that's supporting the animal agriculture industry, because financially there isn't an opportunity to have industrial animal agriculture as we know it without having this outlet that is pet food.
Right. Well, and I always hear a lot of chatter too about how, I'm very particular about ingredients. And I try not to buy, or I don't buy any products that have meal in them. So beef meal or chicken meal or something, because it is this like mystery concoction. And that's kind of sounds like a little bit of what you're sort of referring to a little bit, or that's on like maybe the periphery of this industry is, they're paying them for stuff that is not usable in any other way or not desirable in any other way. And so it is sort of a little cycle going on that,
Well, yeah, meal is basically it's a dehydrated. So meal is actually largely it's a concentrated source of protein. So other nutrients that are otherwise found in meat, water, this is missing. And so meal is mostly just a concentrated source of the protein. So it's almost like a protein powder in terms of how it's delivered. So that's the meal. The other, so if we just say chicken, like without the meal, in terms of where that chicken came from, though, it doesn't differ from where the meal came from. So it's still the same source of an animal. It's just that the tissue was not subjected to, say, for example, moisture elimination and concentration of the protein, but the source of the ingredients are ultimately the same. So virtually all pet food, unless you're specifically buying pet food that comes from its guarantees that it is human grade, grass fed, whatever, you are most likely buying what is referred to as a rendered animal carcass. And this would just be a combination of sometimes species are it's a bit murky. The waters are a bit murky in terms of how all of this happens. But at these rendering facilities, what I can tell you is that typically, so with these referred to as fallen animals or dead stock animals, as well as the byproducts. So all of this meat, before it is sterilized, it's just the animals they're in environments that are very, very, that are heavily contaminated, right? Because animals they live in essentially their own manure. So it's laden with bacteria, pathogenic bacteria. So before that meat can be used for manufacture, it goes to this place called a rendering facility that subjects all of this carcass and byproducts to very, very high temperatures and pressures in order to sterilize the meat. Because as I say, at this point, it's just teeming with Listeria, E. coli, Salmonella, et cetera. So this very, very high pressures and temperatures, they sterilize the meat in that, they kill the bacteria by and large, not all of it, but most of it. And but in the process, it actually also depletes a lot of the nutrients that would otherwise be found in meat. So a lot of the nutrition is lost, and which is also why manufacturers have to add back what is referred to as a premix, and that's the blend of vitamins and minerals that are essential for cats and dogs. And that's what you see. That's why pet food has a long ingredient list. It's because the premix is long. And so all of these nutrients that were otherwise found in meat have to be added back because they're lost during the decontamination process. So, it's an interesting industry. It's complicated, but the challenge,
complicated. I'm learning so much. I feel like my mind is blown right now.
The challenge, though, if you think about, if you wanted to just support, human grade, and you don't want to purchase anything that could otherwise have come from a rendering facility, this is that now you are immediately at odds, or you're actually, yes, it might have been better in terms of welfare for the animal that had been slaughtered, but it is also at odds with the environmental piece, because of course, the more humane an animal is treated, right, the more area it has to live, the better it is cared for, the larger environmental footprint it has. It is just necessarily the case. So you start to choose between, either you have a lower environmental footprint and you purchase rendered meat, which comes with some dubious, sometimes, there's some dubious qualities associated with it because there could be contaminants, either bacterial or chemical, or you err on the side of, or you opt for the, human grade or grass-fed meat, but now you are in direct competition with the human food chip supply chain. And this is absolutely, more harmful environmentally. So you're really sort of like, to just speak frankly, you're really kind of screwed. If you're buying meat from an animal, from a slaughtered animal, there's a cost, regardless of where that meat comes from.
Yeah. So fascinating. Well, and what a wonderful argument for using cultured meat products. So is BioCraft your company? Are you in the business of making pet food, or are you in the business of providing cultured meat to pet food companies?
The latter. So we are an ingredient company. We are making. So our focus is as a mission-based company, which is whose mission is to replace as much slaughtered animal meat with cultured meat. We're focused on volumes, and so we are focusing as an ingredient supplier on partnering with as many pet food manufacturers as possible, and to work with them in disseminating this product as widely as possible. Yeah.
In those partnerships, do you see that a big component of it is going to be consumer education, or do you think that people will adapt to this with no objections?
Oh, I think it will be a mixed bag for sure. Certainly, there will be folks who we've already heard that certain, there are certain categories or certain demographics of people who are very, very keen to try this or to have their dogs and cats try it, and then there are others who are much less so. So I think it will be absolutely, a combination. But this is also why we're very keen to partner with pet food companies that, especially the large ones who already, frankly, they do such a good job with education and basically it's all about, and I don't say this, I don't intend for this to sound to come across negatively, really about the story, right? And so telling a story in a way that people understand, and in a way that's very approachable. And this is marketing. And so working with companies that know how to market new ingredients, because pet food as an industry, especially as, we're just discussing this today, there are a lot of unsavory elements to the pet food industry. Nonetheless, the pet food industry has done an excellent job in being able to really sell it in a way that's quite palatable to people.
Yeah. So if we could harness some of that compelling marketing for good, then that would be really wonderful.
Yeah. So, we're really working on, our objective is to really work, to build sort of these partnerships and to work together to create these new products that have the advantages of both being environmentally sustainable, and humanely sourced, and have a better nutritional profile for their pets.
Yes. Yeah. The nutritional profile, that's so appealing. The other question that I was thinking about too is the cost. So, how does it compare to typical meat products?
Yeah, this is a good question too, because cultured meat, for folks who have been sort of following what's going on in the human food sphere, cultured meat is still quite an expensive ingredient. For us, though, fortunately, because as we discussed, because we are not focusing on or interested in creating that three-dimensionality, it becomes much cheaper for us and much faster and much easier for us. So we are certainly pushing towards achieving a price point that is very, very competitive with current current products, because otherwise we can't fulfill our mission. So we are certainly gunning towards that.
Yeah. Some pet food has just gotten so expensive and the prices are going up and up and up. So, I would imagine that you might even be able to have lower costs than some of like the quote unquote like novel proteins that companies are coming out with.
Definitely certainly the novel proteins, because the supply chain with those, it's very, very volatile. So manufacturers themselves pay a premium for those novel ingredients, because they can't source them in any way that's very, very stable. And even conventional meat, they have a hard time sourcing in a way that's stable. So, we're not there yet, but at some point there will be an inflection point where cultured meat, can or does become cheaper than the cost of conventional meat.
Yeah, absolutely. Just keep innovating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Falconer, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and I've learned so much. I'm really excited to share this conversation, and I hope a lot of pet parents and petpreneurs listen, because this was I learned so much. So where can people go to learn more about BioCraft and what you do?
Yeah, they can check out our website, biocraftpet.com, and our social handles, which are still, BioCraft Pet.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, thanks again for your time and for sharing all this expertise with us.
Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Some of the best conversations happen after the episode. Send me a note on Instagram at WearWagRepeat, or find even more women petpreneurs to connect with in our private Facebook group called Wear, Wag, Repeat Labs. If you want to dig into more episodes, resources to grow your business, or find a link to something we discussed, it is all right there for you at wearwagrepeat.com. I'll see you back here next Wednesday for a fresh conversation.